Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Alien Deadliest Dragons surrounded a kidnapped human little girl until something strange happened. Alara's laughter rang out over the golden fields of New Eden as she chased butterflies, her small hands reaching for their delicate wings. The colony, nestled on a quiet planet far from the conflicts of the galactic core, was her sanctuary, a place of peace and innocence. Her father, John Kalin, watched from the porch with a rare smile on his rugged face. After years as an engineer on distant starships, he had found his purpose here, raising his daughter in safety. But safety, as it turned out, was fleeting. The tranquility shattered when the sky above the colony darkened. A massive alien ship, jagged and predatory, descended like a bird of prey. Its engines roared, drowning out screams as colonists scrambled for cover. Alara froze, her wide eyes reflecting the monstrous vessel. "Alara, run!" John shouted, bolting from the porch, but it was too late. Before he could reach her, a beam of light enveloped the child and lifted her into the air. She screamed for her father, her small hands reaching out as she was pulled toward the ship. John's heart pounded as he raced forward, but the alien craft was already ascending. He fired his old plasma pistol, the bolts fizzing uselessly against the ship's shields. In moments, the vessel disappeared into the atmosphere, leaving behind only silence and John's anguished cry. The cell had taken her. The Esrel were infamous across the galaxy, a brutal race of raiders who thrived on fear and destruction. Rumors painted them as sadistic monsters offering captives to their mythical dragon beast as a twisted form of sacrifice. John had dismissed such tales as exaggerations, but now, with his daughter in their clutches, they had become terrifyingly real. John wasted no time. He raced to the colony's hangar where his ship, the Perseverance, sat in disrepair. It was an aging craft patched with mismatched metal and engines prone to failure, but it was all he had. Inside, John worked with furious precision, his hands flying over controls and wiring as memories of his deep space engineering days flooded back. He fortified the ship's shields, tuned its weapons, and recalibrated its ancient jump drive, all the while haunted by the image of Alara's fearful face and her helpless cries. As the colony's leaders gathered around urging him to wait for reinforcements, "You can't take on the Esrel alone, they're too powerful, you'll get yourself killed, and Alara with you," John's jaw tightened. "If I wait, they'll feed her to that beast. I'm not letting that happen." Fueling his ship and strapping on his pistol, he prepared for the most dangerous journey of his life. As the Perseverance lifted off, the colony grew smaller below him, its lights dimming against the vast darkness of space. His destination was the volcanic world of Carragher, the Esrel stronghold, a place of fire, ash, and death. Yet John was a father before anything else, and no force in the galaxy, not the cell, not their dragon, not even death, would keep him from his daughter. "This isn't the end," he muttered as the stars blurred into hyperspace. "Not for her, not for me." The hunt for Alara had begun. The volcanic planet of Carragher loomed ahead, its surface a chaotic expanse of molten rivers and jagged rock formations, with plumes of ash rising into the atmosphere and casting an eerie orange glow. John gripped the controls of the Perseverance, his jaw clenched as turbulence rattled the ship. Carragher was as much a fortress as it was a planet. Its fiery terrain made it nearly impossible to approach undetected. The Esrel had built their stronghold deep within its most hostile regions, where the heat alone could incinerate an unprotected ship. John's scanners flickered as he approached the atmosphere. The heat shields he had hastily reinforced groaned under the pressure, and warning lights flashed on the console. Ignoring them, his focus remained razor-sharp. "Hold together," he muttered, pushing the ship into a steep descent. The Perseverance pierced through thick layers of ash and emerged over a sprawling wasteland of lava flows and blackened mountains. There he spotted the Esrel's base, a towering structure carved into the side of a molten cliff, its grotesque architecture complete with spires clawing at the sky and crimson banners bearing the Esrel insignia. John adjusted the ship's trajectory and landed on a narrow plateau a few kilometers from the stronghold. He powered down the engines and activated the camouflage field, an old, unreliable device, but his only chance at avoiding detection. Grabbing his modified plasma rifle and a small pack of supplies, he stepped onto the scorching surface of Carragher. The suffocating heat and the acrid stench of sulfur filled the air as he activated the environmental seal on his suit. His boots crunched against the volcanic rock as he made his way toward the base. Every step grew heavier with the knowledge of what he might face inside. Soon, the faint sound of guttural Esrel voices reached his ears. Crouching behind a jagged outcrop, he peered at the massive gates guarded by two towering Esrel warriors, their black armor shimmering in the heat and their curved blades glinting ominously. His heart raced as he formulated a plan. The gates were impenetrable, and the guards too heavily armed for a direct assault. Scanning the area, his engineer's mind worked rapidly until he spotted a ventilation shaft high on the cliffside, its metal cover warped by the heat. "Not the front door," he murmured before beginning his climb. The ascent was brutal. The cliff's uneven surface and the searing heat from molten rivers made every movement a test of endurance. His gloves burned against the rock, but he gritted his teeth and pushed forward. By the time he reached the vent, his suit's environmental systems were near failure. Prying the cover loose, he crawled inside the narrow shaft that barely accommodated his frame. The stifling heat inside, and the pulsating metal walls filled with the planet's energy, urged him to move slowly, plasma rifle at the ready as he inched deeper into the base. The echoes of Esrel voices grew louder until he reached a cavernous chamber. His heart clenched at the sight. The chamber was filled with Esrel warriors, their grotesque forms illuminated by the flickering light of molten pools. At the center stood a massive cage with bars glowing red-hot. Huddled in a corner was Alara, unharmed but visibly terrified, her small frame swallowed by the monstrous surroundings. Before John could move, the chamber shook with a deafening roar. From a tunnel opposite the cage, a massive creature emerged. The dragon was a nightmare made flesh. Its scales shimmered like molten obsidian, and its eyes burned with an unnatural red light. Moving with predatory grace, its massive claws clicked against the stone floor as heat radiated from its body, distorting the air. John's grip on his rifle tightened as the creature, its head nearly scraping the cavern's high ceiling, drew near. The Esrel warriors bowed and chanted in guttural tongues as the dragon fixed its glowing eyes on the cage. Alara whimpered, pressing herself against the bars. The beast sniffed the air, its nostrils flaring before coming to a halt. The dragon tilted its head, its gaze narrowing in confusion. Then the Esrel leader, a hulking figure clad in ornate armor, stepped forward. "The tribute is ready," he bellowed in their harsh language. "Feast, mighty Zerar, consume the child and grow stronger." Yet the dragon did not move. It lowered its head slightly and sniffed at the cage. Alara's wide eyes filled not only with fear but also curiosity. John's mind raced. The dragon wasn't attacking. Seizing the opportunity, he carefully removed a small EMP grenade from his pack. It was a gamble, as the Esrel technology might be resistant, but it was the only way to disable the cage's power field. After priming the grenade, he counted silently before tossing it into the chamber. The explosion was silent yet effective. The lights flickered, and then the cage's energy field collapsed. Chaos erupted as the Esrel warriors shouted, their attention diverted by the disturbance. Without hesitation, John dropped from the ventilation shaft, landing hard on the cavern floor. He fired his rifle. Blue plasma bolts struck two Esrel warriors before they could react. "Daddy," Alara cried as she ran toward the cage. Her face lit up with hope. The dragon turned its massive head, fixing its gaze on John. For a terrifying moment, he feared an attack, but then the dragon stepped back, lowering its head as if to shield Alara from the chaos. John smashed the lock on the cage with the butt of his rifle. The door swung open, and Alara threw herself into his arms. "I knew you'd come," she sobbed. "I've got you, sweetheart," he murmured, holding her tightly. "We're getting out of here." But the Esrel were not finished. The leader roared, rallying his warriors. "Surrender now, human, or die." John tightened his grip on Alara as his mind raced for options. He could try to take a shot, but the odds were not in his favor. Then, with a thunderous crash, Zerar, the dragon, stepped forward, positioning itself between John and the Esrel. Its spines flared as it let out a low guttural growl that made even the hardened warriors hesitate. The leader snarled and signaled his troops to fire. Plasma bolts streaked through the air. Zerar spread its wings, deflecting the blasts off its obsidian-like scales, and then roared, unleashing a torrent of fire that engulfed the Esrel squad. The intense heat forced John to shield Alara's face as the screams of their attackers faded into silence. When the flames subsided, the exit was clear. Zerar turned its massive head to John, and in that moment man and beast locked eyes with an unspoken understanding. "Thanks," John said, nodding. "Let's get out of here." In the distance, the Perseverance was visible, perched precariously on the edge of a volcanic plateau. John's heart raced as he sprinted toward it with Alara clinging tightly to him and Zerar following closely, its massive frame moving with surprising grace. Just as they reached the ship, an alarm on John's wrist communicator blared. His sensors had detected multiple incoming SREL ships. Glancing skyward, he spotted 3 dark shapes descending rapidly, their sleek designs glinting in the fiery light. "SREL reinforcements," he muttered, setting Alara down gently. "Get inside the ship, sweetheart. Strap in." "But what about you?" she asked, voice trembling. "I'll be right behind you," John replied. Alara hesitated, then obeyed, disappearing into the ship. John turned to Zerar, who had already noticed the approaching ships. The dragon growled, its wings spreading as it faced the oncoming threat. "Stay close," John instructed as he climbed into the pilot's seat. The Perseverance roared to life, its engines straining against the heat as the SREL ships opened fire. John engaged the ship's shields and lifted off the ground. Zerar leapt into the air with powerful wings beating against the volcanic winds, soaring alongside the Perseverance as it weaved through plasma fire with remarkable agility. John watched in awe as the dragon unleashed bursts of flame that forced 2 of the SREL ships to scatter. However, a larger vessel, bristling with weapons, locked onto the Perseverance, and alarms blared as its targeting systems zeroed in. John swerved narrowly, avoiding a missile that exploded just below the ship. "Come on, you big bastard," he muttered, pushing the engines to their limit. The Perseverance jolted when another missile grazed its shields, sparks flying from the console as Alara screamed from the back. "Daddy," she cried. "I've got this," John shouted, though his heart pounded with fear. Before the larger ship could fire again, Zerar roared and dove straight for it. The dragon's claws tore into the vessel's hull, ripping through its armor with terrifying precision. Flames engulfed the enemy ship as Zerar unleashed its full fury, sending it spiraling into the molten surface below. The remaining SREL ships, witnessing their leader's destruction, retreated into the clouds, their engines screaming as they vanished. John exhaled shakily, his hands trembling as he studied the Perseverance. "Alara, you okay?" he called. "I'm okay," she shouted back. "What about Zerar?" John turned his gaze to the dragon, now gliding effortlessly alongside the ship with scales glimmering in the volcanic light. Despite the chaos, it appeared unscathed. The creature rumbled softly, its glowing eyes meeting John's. "Not bad, big guy," he said with a grin. "Not bad at all." As the Perseverance ascended into the upper atmosphere, Zerar followed, its massive wings carrying it effortlessly through the thinning air. John adjusted the ship's trajectory, setting a course for New Eden. Alara emerged from the cockpit, her face lighting up when she saw the dragon through the viewport. "Daddy, Zerar is coming with us." John hesitated, glancing at the creature. Zerar let out a deep, resonant growl that seemed almost friendly. "Looks like it," John said with a smile. "Guess we've got a new friend." As the stars enveloped them, father, daughter, and dragon left Carragher behind, united by an unlikely bond forged in fire and courage. In the quiet moments during hyperspace, John adjusted the Perseverance's damage systems while sparks occasionally sputtered from the panels and the engines groaned under strain. Yet he couldn't help but gaze out the viewport at Zerar, who soared beside them at breakneck speed, and at Alara, curled up in one of the rear seats fast asleep after the ordeal. Her tiny, peaceful face contrasted sharply with the tears that still glistened in his eyes as he remembered how close he had come to losing her. Suddenly, the comms console beeped, breaking the quiet moment. John pressed a button and the monitor displayed Zerar's glowing form outside the ship. The dragon's massive wings folded slightly as it maneuvered closer, its molten eyes locked on John. The creature rumbled softly, the sound reverberating through the ship's hull. "You don't look like you're going back to Carragher anytime soon," John muttered, leaning back and rubbing his face. "I guess you've made your choice." He turned to Alara as her eyes fluttered open, and she smiled sleepily upon seeing Zerar through the window. "He's staying with us, isn't he, Daddy?" John hesitated, glancing between his daughter and the dragon. "Looks like it," he said. "He's not exactly subtle, though you can't exactly hide him back on New Eden." Alara giggled, her voice light despite the weight of their ordeal. "We'll make it work. He saved us, and he's part of our family now." Zerar roared softly in agreement, and John smiled, tapping a few buttons to stabilize their course. "Welcome to the family, just no incinerating the neighbors," he joked. As the Perseverance emerged from hyperspace, the serene blue-green orb of New Eden filled the viewport, a welcome contrast to the volcanic chaos of Carragher. Home was a balm to John's frayed nerves. He angled the ship toward the colony and sent a message ahead to inform them of their arrival. As they descended, Zerar followed closely, its massive wings casting long shadows over the fields below. The colony's residents gathered quickly, their faces a mix of relief and awe. Many had believed John's mission to save Alara was suicidal, and the sight of both father and daughter alive and accompanied by a dragon left them speechless. The ship landed with a hiss of steam as the damaged engines powered down. John stepped out first, his boots crunching against the gravel, and helped Alara down, her small hand clutching his tightly. Zerar landed a short distance away, the ground trembling under its weight. The dragon folded its wings and scanned the gathered crowd with molten eyes. Marl, the colony leader, an older woman with cautious eyes, stepped forward. "John, what is that?" She asked slowly, her voice tinged with amazement and concern as she looked from him to Alara and then to the enormous creature. "Zerar, the reason we're standing here," John gestured. Marl narrowed her eyes. "You brought a dragon to the colony?" John sighed, already anticipating the ensuing arguments. "He is not a threat. He protected us from the cell. Without him, we both would have perished." Alara stepped forward in a small yet firm voice. "He's my friend. He saved me." The colony fell silent as Zerar lowered his massive head, rumbling softly in a sound that was gentle rather than threatening. Marl studied the dragon for a long moment before nodding. "If he has earned your trust, John, then he's earned ours." Though there were many questions ahead, John chuckled softly. "One problem at a time." Over the next few days, Zerar became an unexpected part of the colony. Although his presence initially caused unease, the dragon quickly proved to be more than a symbol of fear. He helped plow fields with his powerful tail, cleared debris with ease, and even protected the colony's livestock from predators. His bond with Alara was particularly striking. She often sat by him, chatting as though he were another human. Meanwhile, John worked tirelessly to repair the Perseverance and strengthen the colony's defenses. He knew the Esrel would not take their defeat lightly and would soon return. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, John found Alara sitting beside Zerar, her small hand resting on the dragon's massive forepaw. She looked up at him quietly. "Dad, I feel sad," she said softly. "Sad why?" John asked, crouching beside her. "Do you miss something?" Alara replied gently, "I don't know what, but I think you do." John studied Zerar, noting how the dragon's glowing eyes reflected the setting sun. "He's been through a lot," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe we can help him just as he helped us." Alara looked thoughtful. "Maybe we can help him like he helped us." John smiled, ruffling her hair. "You've got a big heart, kiddo." As the stars began to fill the sky, Zerar lifted his head and let out a low, resonant roar, a sound that wasn't one of anger or warning, but of something deeper, perhaps a call to others of his kind. John and Alara watched silently, wondering if answers lay hidden in the stars above. For now, Zerar was home, and together they would face whatever challenges the galaxy had yet to throw their way. Peace in New Eden, however, was short-lived. Days after John and Alara's return, alarms blared across the colony as Esrel warships emerged from hyperspace. The haunting silhouettes of their vessels cast long, ominous shadows over the planet's surface, their engines humming with a dreadful resonance. The cell had come for vengeance, and for Zerar. John stood at the colony's central command hub, his jaw tight as he studied the incoming fleet on the radar. "They didn't take long," he muttered, gripping the edge of the console. Marl stood beside him, her face pale but resolute. "What do they want?" she asked quietly. John glanced out the viewport where Zerar stood at the edge of the settlement, his glowing red eyes fixed on the sky. "They want him, John," he said, "and they'll destroy us to get him." The colony's defenses were meager, designed to fend off pirates and small raiding parties, not a full-scale invasion. But John had no intention of giving up. "Get everyone to the shelters," he ordered Marl. "I'll handle the rest." Marl hesitated. "And how exactly do you plan to stop them?" John looked at Zerar, who was by his side as the first SREL drop ships descended. The dragon roared, his voice shaking the ground as his massive wings unfurled to take to the sky. "The beast belongs to them," Marl warned. "Surrender now, human, or die." John tightened his grip on Alara. "My daughter is in danger," he said, his mind racing for a plan. Then with a thunderous roar, Zerar charged forward. His spines flared as he engaged the enemy. John scrambled into the Perseverance, his fingers flying over the controls as the ship took evasive action. Meanwhile, Zerar fought valiantly, dodging plasma fire and unleashing streams of flame. John maneuvered the Perseverance behind the Dragon, using its massive form as partial cover while he fired the ship's newly installed cannons, taking out a SREL drop ship as it attempted to land near the colony. "They're everywhere," Alara exclaimed, her hands gripping the console. "Keep calm," John said steadily. "We've got this." The battle raged on. The Cell deployed their trump card, a massive warship that dwarfed the colony. Its cannons fired beams of searing energy, slicing through the terrain. Zerar roared in defiance and flew directly toward the warship. "Wait, what is he doing?" John shouted as the Dragon charged. Plasma fire rained down, but Zerar spun and dodged the blasts, scorching the warship's hull. The Dragon latched onto the vessel. His claws tore through the armor as he climbed toward the main cannon. From the cockpit of the Perseverance, John and Alara watched in disbelief as Zerar engaged the warship head-on. Despite his ferocity, the SREL were relentless. Smaller fighters swarmed, their plasma bolts targeting weak points in Zerar's scales. "He's getting overwhelmed," John muttered, tightening his grip on the controls. Determined to help, he piloted the Perseverance directly into the fray, targeting the smaller ships that harassed Zerar. In the auxiliary station, Alara's small but steady hands fired on the attackers. "Hang on, Zerar," she shouted. The Dragon roared again, his spines flaring as he tore through the warship's main cannon. The weapon exploded in a fiery blaze, sending shock waves through the air. Yet the effort cost Zerar dearly. A concentrated volley from the SREL fighters struck his wings, and he plummeted toward the ground. "No," Alara cried as John pushed the Perseverance into a steep dive to follow Zerar's descent. The Dragon crashed into the earth with a thunderous impact, carving a massive crater into the colony's outskirts. Dust and debris filled the air as John landed the ship nearby. He and Alara rushed to Zerar's side, their hearts pounding. The Dragon's massive body was battered and bloodied. His breathing labored, yet his molten eyes remained defiant as they fixed on the remaining SREL forces. "Don't you dare give up," John said, placing a hand on the Dragon's flank. "We're not done yet." The crippled warship, still airborne, turned its remaining weapons toward the colony. John realized they had one last chance to stop it. "Alara, stay here. Take care of Zerar," he ordered firmly. "What are you going to do?" she asked fearfully. John grabbed a portable plasma charge from the ship. "This is it," he said. "We end this even if Zerar is too injured to fly." With determination, he piloted the Perseverance toward the warship, weaving through enemy fire and evading blasts that threatened to tear the ship apart. Approaching the vessel's core, he activated the plasma charge and set its timer. "Come on," he muttered, his hands steady as he navigated the warship's defenses. He launched the charge into the exposed reactor, watching as it embedded deep within the machinery. The timer ticked down while John pulled the Perseverance into a sharp climb. The engines screamed in protest until the warship erupted in a massive explosion that lit up the sky. The shockwave rocked the Perseverance, but the ship held together as John steered it back toward the colony. On the ground, Alara watched in awe as the warship disintegrated. Tears streamed down her face as she turned to Zerar, who rumbled softly, his eyes still faintly glowing. "You did it! We're safe!" she whispered. Moments later, John landed the Perseverance and stumbled out. Alara ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. "Daddy, it's over," she said. John looked at Zerar, who lifted his massive head slightly and let out a deep, resonant growl. Approaching the Dragon, John placed a hand on its side. You saved us all. Rest now. You've earned it. Though scarred by battle, the colony stood strong. The cell had been defeated, and Zerar's bravery earned him a place among the people. As the sun rose over New Eden, father, daughter, and dragon sat together, bound by a bond forged in fire and resilience. For John and Alara, Zerar was more than a protector. He was family. Together, they would face whatever challenges the galaxy had yet to throw their way.